There are funeral traditions that carry more than just longing. They carry the weight of centuries of fear, superstition, and pain. During my career as a funeral director, I thought I had seen it all. Mourning rituals, mysterious symbols, families weeping over secrets that would never be revealed. But nothing prepared me for the night a centuries-old Chinese tradition crossed the threshold of my funeral home and turned a routine farewell into an ancestral nightmare. I always believed that the past is buried with the dead. However, one winter taught me that certain traditions have enough power to haunt even the brightest rooms of modern cities, that when an ancient custom resurfaces, no one, not even an experienced funeral director, is truly safe from the supernatural. My story begins like an ordinary, simple, everyday service, but it ended with me questioning everything about the veil between life and death. Perhaps like me, it will steal your sleep too. That day the funeral home was quiet, the air dense with usual responsibilities. However, the silence was broken by the arrival of the body and the rites that accompanied the millennia-old tradition of a Chinese family. I smelled a strong and intoxicating scent of incense, an aroma that seemed to carry an ancestral history that could not be ignored. As I walked among the shadows, I reflected on the weight certain beliefs carry, how rituals hold more than just symbols. They carry lives, fears, and even veiled threats that don't only belong to the departed, but to the living. There were moments of invisible tension where the impossible began to dance around me. What lay before me was not just death, it was a succession of secrets we would wish never to uncover. It was February when I was tasked with handling the body of Wei Lian, an elderly Chinese immigrant, respected by her clan and completely mysterious to those outside of it. The grandson arrived hurriedly, with a closed expression, sweaty hands, and a face burdened with the ancestral weight that words could not explain. He requested traditional rituals and absolute silence. He warned that the family would bring all the necessary items for the rites and that the ceremony should take place precisely at midnight. There was no room for delays or doubts. I realized that this farewell held much more than the simple passage to the afterlife. As I entered the preparation room, I encountered small dolls made of colored paper and ashes carefully arranged, bronze coins, red sealed envelopes, and a porcelain mask decorated with Chinese symbols I couldn't understand, but which carried an inexplicable energy. The intense scent of incense filled the air, unlike anything I had ever experienced in that space. It was as if that aroma blended the past with the future, tradition with threat. The grandson, looking me in the eye, whispered with a seriousness that burned, "The dead need to travel protected, so they don't haunt the living. If they are angered, they can summon things from the other world." He gave me firm instructions to never look at the deceased's face once I placed the mask, and above all, to never ever let the ritual candle go out until the ceremony was complete. That look wasn't an act. It was a warning. The air seemed electrified, as if an invisible and unusual presence was about to manifest within those walls. It was then that I felt, for the first time, the weight of traditions that had carried dark secrets for millennia. At midnight, with the family gathered in the vigil hall, I began the final preparations for the ritual. I lit the ritual candle, casting a yellow, flickering, weak light over the room. The incense burned slowly, as if it wished to prolong time beyond the natural. I followed each family request with reverence. The joss paper, the money for the dead, was carefully placed, offerings were distributed, and the small metal bells hung in the corners of the room began to emit delicate sounds with each slight breeze. As the ceremony progressed, the atmosphere became almost unbearably heavy. The air felt thin, blending with inaudible whispers coming from every corner. Instinctively, I looked up. The porcelain mask of the woman seemed to be watching me, its painted eyes gleaming with an unsettling light, fixed on me even in that dimness. At one point, a cold draft swept through the room, causing the candle to flicker dangerously. Reflexively, I reached out to relight it, but hesitated. The grandson's warning echoed in my mind with terrifying clarity. If the candle goes out, don't try to relight it. Just leave. A shadow rushed by in the corner of the room. I was alone, but I swore I felt invisible arms pulling me. grounding my body away from that faint, threatening light. I stood motionless, senses on high alert. The distant sound of the family's drums echoed like an ancestral mantra, mixed with forgotten tongues. The fear I felt was physical, almost tangible, spoken with the same weight as the intense and pungent smell of burned incense, emphasizing every second in that invisible prison of silence and suspense. The clock struck 12:23 when a sharp bang echoed through the preparation room, violently breaking the tension that seemed dormant. I rushed over, heart pounding. The candle had gone out, and the largest of the paper dolls, which symbolized the spirits, moved on its own, from the deceased's chest to the floor where it now seemed like a guardian of the door. The coins that made up the offerings were scattered across the floor as if desperately thrown with force. I tried to turn on the lights, but they didn't respond. The only source of light was the flickering lantern of my phone, casting shadows that seemed to dance on the walls like specters playing around me. I looked at the coffin and saw the deceased's mask fallen on the floor. It had partially revealed her pale, cold face, but what froze me was the gleam in her open eyes that seemed to see through the thin line between life and death, and that stared directly at me. On the other side of the hall, I heard the family chanting mantras, increasingly frantic, while they beat the drums at the accelerated pace of ancestral anxiety. Suddenly, a strong wind appeared out of nowhere, spinning the offerings in a macabre dance through the air. A sharp pain ignited in my neck, as if a warning was being sent for me to leave immediately. Stumbling, I left the room, and behind me, the sound of nails scratching against wood seemed to chase me. The funeral home gate slammed shut with a deafening bang. In the silence that followed, I heard the Eastern bells shake by themselves, as if invisible bodies were breaking through the gates of the world to haunt me. Still in shock, I saw the grandson and an elderly family member approach the room, each holding ancient talismans and amulets. They entered together, beginning a secret ceremony. An ancestral prayer whispered in low voices, accompanied by salt throws, joss paper scattered in every corner, and a careful closing of the doors to contain whatever was there. For a moment that seemed to last an eternity. The deceased's eyes closed on their own. But the calm didn't last. One of the paper dolls, which had remained motionless, suddenly caught fire. The black smoke spiraled frantically up to the ceiling, forming twisted faces and silent mouths that whispered an inaudible lament. Finally, the elder turned to me, her eyes hard and incisive, and spoke with a firm voice. "Tradition is not folklore. You thought it would just be another ritual, but when the ways of the dead are not respected, they return to collect from those who held them." At the end of the ceremony, everything became still, but the fear did not cease. The family thanked me for my help, but the elder whispered in my ear one last warning: "Never tell this. If you persist, it will take others with you." That night I locked the funeral home, unable to find rest. I slept sitting up, lights on, listening to whispers in a language I couldn't understand. Months passed, but every time an Eastern family arrives at my funeral home, I feel the cold creeping from my spine to my toes. Sometimes I find forgotten offerings in the corners, left as silent reminders. I no longer question. I just respect the rituals and pray silently that nothing ever returns to be like that night. I ask you, who watched until the end? What lies between superstition and the supernatural? How many of our modern rituals carry, without us knowing, the weight of ancestral fear, deep respect, or even something much more sinister? If you stayed until the end, comment the words "dark tradition" and tell me, have you ever witnessed or heard about rituals that cross generations and that perhaps work precisely because no one dares to break them?